When I was 18 years old, I caught a case. This was 27 years ago, and I'm standing in the place where I was incarcerated.
When I was 17 years old, March 8, 1990, I got shot multiple times, standing on a corner in my neighborhood. And, like many inner city kids who get shot, there was no treatment plan. There was no kind of, hey, you should see a therapist, you should see a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or whatever the case may be. And so I was just left with all the emotional damage that comes with that level of trauma. And I began to tell myself if I found myself in conflict again, that I would shoot first. And 16 months later, got into a conflict about 2 o'clock in the morning during a drug trade that I refused to make, and that escalated into an argument, and then that argument escalated, and I fired 4 shots that tragically caused the man's death, was sentenced to 17 to 40 years in prison, ended up serving a total of 19 years, with some of those years being in solitary confinement.
I went to jail when I was 15. I tried to rob somebody who eventually tried to take the gun from me. And not to go into too much detail about it, eventually ended up taking his life throughout the process. A month and a half after that, the police came to my house, pretty much woke up out of my sleep with guns drawn down on me, and they took me in. It was initially first-degree murder, and that was reduced down to second-degree homicide once I took a plea.
This call is from a federal prison.
Coming from a city like Oakland, I think, or like LA or Chicago, gangs is the mentality. In Oakland, hustling is the mentality, having money, right? So starting in 9th and 10th grade, I always had like a 2-bit hustle. And one of the first hustles I had was I'd met a white lady in the neighborhood, and she was a heroin addict, but she was a booster. And she was, hey, I can get, certain things. And I would say, oh, can you get me, say at that time, a phone or baby's clothing or anything? And she would get it, and I would resell it. And that was my way of like making a little bit of money. And then while doing that business and meeting people, basically somebody asked me, hey, can you get some cocaine? Didn't really know much about it, but I knew a lot of people. And I say, hey, I'm, looking for some cocaine. And at the time, I think I sold his brother some phones too. And when we were talking about the quantity, was interesting. He was like, yeah, I can give you one for like 13, right? And at the time, I didn't really understand what that meant, but he was talking about a kilogram. And I had never really sold drugs on the corner, hand to hand, or anything like that. So it was some confusion in what I was trying to get. I think the person wanted to buy like an 8-ball or something. And when he was explaining it to me, I went and told an older gentleman that I know, like kind of, hey, this is what happened. This guy was saying, and he was like, wait, you have a connection on a kilo? I was like, yeah, that's what the guy said. This gentleman, which was an older dude in the neighborhood, and I remember him telling me, man, you got the plug. And I can go into great detail, but that was the beginning. So basically, I stumbled upon a connection for cocaine. And one day, the FBI and the DEA came to my house, my dad's house, kicked in the door, and I was indicted federally. And the way it worked is the federal government was on to the guy that I was buying the drugs from, and they tapped his phone and put surveillance on him. And by watching him, they got me. At the time, I'm thinking, oh, what is this? I have a little bit of money. I can get out of this. Didn't really understand the magnitude of a federal case. So I was federally indicted, pled guilty to conspiracy to distribute cocaine, was sentenced to 60 months, which is 5 years. And then was sent to federal prison.
I went down for a shooting. I was facing 38 years to life. I wound up getting 6 years on a shooting that happened in East Palo Alto, right out in front of my house. And when I went down, I wouldn't say that I was really academically focused, conscious, or any of that. but I did wind up getting a GED in county jail.
All of us have been in prison to some degree. Whether it's a financial prison, whether you've been at a dead-end job, whether you've been in a relationship for an extended period of time that you wanted to get out of, all of us have been incarcerated in some way, shape, or form. You don't necessarily have to have a 9-digit federal registration number in order to be doing time. And I think that how we break out of those prisons is greater than the prisons that we're in. How we leave those relationships, how we have the courage to walk away from that job that doesn't seem to be giving us upward mobility, how we shake from those friends who seem to have us, paralyzed from our creativity, so on and so forth. That's the beauty of freedom. And that's what I want to leave our audience with. In 2018, the Bureau of Justice Statistics revealed that more than 60% of formerly incarcerated African-American males were likely to reoffend within 3 years of being released. The main issue addressed in this documentary is the high rate of recidivism of formerly incarcerated African-American males in the United States, and the potential for education and mentorship in reducing that high recidivism rate. Reclaiming My Humanity aims to address this problem by highlighting how themes such as anti-Blackness and systemic racism have contributed to mass incarceration in the United States. Additionally, justice-impacted people face difficulties when attempting to integrate back into society. Robert Alexander, my friend, my guy, and Hood to Higher Education are focused on the prison to school pipeline. We challenge mass incarceration and the overcriminalization of Black and brown folks. Hood to Higher Education and the Reform Alliance provides alternatives to crime through school, mentorship, and reentry strategies. Please enjoy Reclaiming My Humanity and prepare for a lively discussion.
Guess I didn't make bail. Got time and a story to tell. Started when I was 9 years old. Woke up and daddy was gone. I started hustling, they couldn't tell me nothing. Running in the hood, trying to be somebody. My soul was on empty. I was searching for something. Tried to be good. Tried to keep from trouble. Living too fast. Trying to make good on the hustle. Sometimes it get rough. Sometimes it get rough.
In 2022, Robert Alexander chatted with over a dozen individuals, ranging from friends, families, professionals, and those who were directly impacted by the system. Being the educator that he is, he asked all of his participants, or as he likes to call them, heroes, what was their relationship with education and how did they feel about school?
Do y'all feel like if we would have took school seriously early on, it would have impacted, it would have changed our trajectory in terms of not going into jail, not going into prison? How do y'all feel about education as a way of opening doors and creating opportunities? For me, like my mother felt that the only way to get a good education for us was to send us to white schools. So they had a plus. I was going to Meade Elementary School. We had a lie about our address. We was living downtown in a homeless shelter. They shipped from Meade Elementary. They would ship us to Daler, which is sad already that somebody has to feel that in order for your kids to get a good education, they got to take you out of the ghetto. Right. But I don't think it was necessarily the issue wasn't that we didn't take it serious. I think that the issue was that the schools didn't take us serious.
Hey, so I grew up in East Palo Alto, right? And I grew up there, 80s, 90s, when it was rough, right? 1992, murder capital of the country. So my father, from the time I was a year old, had life without the possibility of parole. My mother was a substance user. When my mother was pregnant with me, she was serving time in Terminal Island, right? 5-year sentence. When I was born, 9 days old, my grandparents came and picked me up from Terminal Island. They raised me for the first 5 years. When my mother came home, you know, I went to live with her, and I was a little confused. But I was raised for the streets. I was raised like a gangster. I know before I was a little confused as to what was going on. Now I see things clear. If, you know, this community over here going to Harvard, they're raising these kids to go to Harvard. This community over here go to San Quentin, Pelican Bay, right? So what she was doing is she wasn't gonna have her son walking into no institution like her. He ain't gonna be no punk.
When I was going to school, school was almost like a community in and of itself. You know, the classes weren't as big. So teachers knew, you know, your name. And you know, when I would go through school, I was known for being, you know, an academic standout. So, you know, to have a kid go from being an academic standout to like barely participating, like, I feel like the teachers should have caught that back then. I feel like they should have been able to see, hey, what's going on with this kid? Let's kind of find out if there's a way that we can support him getting back on the right track. And unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Man, my youth was challenging in the sense that I grew up with my parents who were in the life and lived this really fast lifestyle. And when life, you know, when the hustle got too much for them, then I would live with my grandparents who were very strict Judeo-Christians, you know, and so, you know, it was like two extremes for me growing up.
Man, I thought school was boring. They weren't really challenging me, so I mean, I was a pretty smart kid. That's what my parents told me. I would get in trouble, so I would finish my work early, and then I start messing with people, and I would get in trouble. That type of stuff. So they tried to put me in like gate classes or whatever, but my behavior was starting to get more problematic for the classroom, so it didn't work out. I started cutting school when I got to junior high. Now, mind you, this is the late 80s, like 87 when I'm in junior high. And at that time in Oakland, it was ridiculous. It was a lot of, that I know now was trauma going on. A lot of the students, fellow classmates or whatever were, you know, they had parents on drugs. My parents were on drugs. So grandparents was raising us, a lot of violence. I believe today that it was like we were all angry and mad and didn't know where to direct that energy, and we're going through puberty at the same time. So it was rough.
I learned how to rock it up, chop it up, get it moving on the streets, and, you know, thou shalt not be disrespected, thou shalt not be a snitch, you know, thou shalt take off when disrespected. I learned that from the house and home, right? I didn't learn it from my homeboys on the street. I learned that from my mother, right? So I let you know that because I think with that picture right there, you can understand the type of lifestyle. So I grew up Section 8, food stamps, welfare, Medi-Cal sticker baby, right? Nothing was given, never put on a pair of pants, a shirt, jacket, nothing that wasn't sponsored by either welfare state or crack sales, right? So growing up like that, my mentality was that, right? It was surface level, big emotion, right? And, you know, I had to really kind of sort of funnel my way through the murder capital without becoming a statistic or a victim.
So I had very different perspectives on school depending on who I was living with at the time. So when I was living with my parents, we lived in Sunnydale. It was all about the hustle and bustle. I would go on licks with my parents. So school was just something that I'd done on the side to get out of the way. And then it was like it was not safe because in the hood, I was the only child. And so a lot of violence would happen at school, you know? And so that was the place where I first realized that I was not safe. The teachers weren't gonna protect me, you know, and that I had to get connected in the streets. However, when I came to live with my grandparents, my grandfather was a minister, school was everything. You had to get the grades, had to go in, had to comply, had to show up.
Like, I really didn't understand what school was for. Like, my people didn't understand. It's just like, get good grades, pass, you get your diploma, you get a job. Okay, well, if I'm out here in the streets, I don't need a job. Like, so what am I really doing this for?
Like you said, they don't try to adapt to us at all. They don't try to figure us out. They don't try to teach us no kind of curriculum that applies to what we're going at all. Problem is that everywhere we turn around in school, instead of looking for ways to support us, they're looking for ways to incriminate us, incarcerate us, Why is there an officer on the campus of a school anyways? If we have people that care about students on the campus, if I seen a young dude and he got a bottle in his backpack and he's out of class, I'm gonna say, hey, homie, let's go to this classroom. You need to be in the classroom right now. What are you doing out? I'm not searching your backpack and seeing what you got in the backpack. They already see us as a criminal. They already see us as a threat. Would they be doing little Becky the same way? Would they be doing little Elizabeth the same way? Probably not. So, and the sad thing about it is that I never received no actual, like, substantial support with my schooling until I made it to college. But how many of us even make it to college to get that support?
When I got to state prison, it took me a minute because I was adjusting to I'm not gonna lie, the reality side of it, the yard part of it, where we, collide with everybody else. Not saying that was really the focus either, it's just something that happened, right? But my cellies, who was lifers, one was from East Palo Alto, Kareem, I never forget. He signed me up for all these different programs, man. Attitudinal healing, Catargio, which means to release you of that which binds you, college courses, everything, because he's trying to keep me away from the yard. He was like, youngster, you tripping, right? You need to do something. And they would come with these ducats, and I'm like, man, okay, I thought this was automatic. You had to go to these programs, AVP, Alternative to Violence program, right? And I'm going to these self-help groups and these programs, and then I took a class. It was Modern American Literature, right? The book I read was The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. I remember reading that and going, man, I left with like, you need an academic outcome. I took the course just because I got signed up. But once I realized I was the only one that got an A+ in the course, that's when I started having academic confidence.
It's funny, they had a program that they had in there led to my job. One program was a janitorial program. Another program was college courses. So my first college credit was through John Hancock College, which was the college in the area of Lompoc. They had teachers that were professors that came in there and they taught classes. So I took the janitorial program, which was through their college. So all my documentation just said John Hancock College. I was able to get, I want to say 18 or 21 semester credit. Just like somebody on the outside who went to John Hancock College, they were exactly the same. So when I came home, I enrolled in community college in Oakland at Laney College. I was able to use those as credits. So they're the same as a person who was attending college on the outside who went to John Hancock.
I got the GED in juvenile hall, but once I left juvenile hall, there was no institution that had education outside of the coastline through the mail, and your family had to have money for you to be able to get that. Outside of like me just independently going to a library, learning from someone is sharing, having a book sent in to me for me to read, but nothing like professors, none of these deep conversations to spark thoughts in a way that you would get from being in the college class, like sociology, for example. My education was amongst my peers.
I wish that that opportunity, that existed when I first went to prison remained throughout. I wish there was more opportunities for people to get an education, learn a trade, do something that allows them to create a career path for themselves once they're released from prison. The way I went about finding opportunities was really just talk to the guys who was already there. And some of the guys was telling me about college program that they had, and I took interest in that and enrolled in Montcalm Community College. Back then, we still could get Pell Grants. And so I enrolled in that, took data business process and was averaging a 4.0. And then due to Clinton's crime bill, they took the funding out of that program and we ended up not being able to complete our college education. And, now I know that a lot of prisons are trying to reimagine some programming. Some states do it a little better than others, but a lot of states are extremely far behind. And I think a lot of the offerings that they do currently have don't really set people up for success for life after prison. A lot of this stuff is outdated, no longer relevant, and it's not tapped into the current labor needs, which is people having some type of tech experience, some type of knowledge of what's going on in different industries where people are actually hiring, whether it's trucking. I think that there should be those type of programs in prison.
My experience in college just like in any other white institution, has been on the spectrum of both polarities. So there's some things that have happened really great. I found some really powerful allies, but I've also experienced some very intense harms. In classes, I stopped disclosing my history because my peers would treated me differently once I would say in class I was formerly incarcerated. The other thing is that there were huge gaps because I had been away from school, 20, 30-year gap. There was such a diversion or a split in our cohort that we had to have an intervention from the dean because it was just a separation of those who had expertise and those who were really coming in learning. I started to acknowledge disclosure. Sometimes I would share, other times I wouldn't. But I never thought that would be an issue in college. I always thought that folks would understand. I thought school was a safe place. I'm not in the hood no more. I'm not in the pen. I done made it in society. I made it. I'm here. This is where success happens. But no, the challenges didn't stop, and I didn't anticipate that. So that's some of the things that I say to brothers and try to, put support around them because, there are unforeseen challenges and they don't stop just because you decide to go to college and do the right thing.
Think about it like this. When I was incarcerated before I got a chance to go to the Prison University Project, my mind was limited. My mind was just shaped in South Central and Inglewood and juvenile hall and prison. That's all I knew. That's all my mind said. I didn't have that expansiveness in my thinking. Once I went to the Prison University Project and took some of those classes, even though I haven't been places or experienced certain things, that exposure to those kind of conversations also was a part of my wisdom and development. And I was able to critically think about things and different things like that to where I felt like, oh, although I never been to, Africa, now it felt like I've been there because we had this discussion about, the culture and what happened to the people of Africa, how that connects with me, how does that make me feel? And so I felt like I grew just by sitting in the classroom and having these discussions. So I had my mind was just limited to what I knew before my education, and then I feel like it just expanded, and definitely set me up to be here today. And that gave me a chance too. It gives me a chance to make a decision. That kind of education, because if all I knew was what I experienced in the gang life, me hearing about more opportunities, me seeing the world, and me learning about the history that led up to this gang culture gave me certain knowledge that tells me that I bit the fish hook. I wasn't exposed to this kind of knowledge when I was in the gang life, but being outside of it and learning, I'm now seeing that this is what happened to our people. This is why I got to this point. So now I have a decision to make. When they say knowledge is power, knowledge is definitely a tool that can get us to a place of empowerment and making righteous decisions. It's kind of like laying things out for you. If I only give you a little bit of information and you choose to make a decision, that's one thing. But if I lay everything out, you may choose a different decision. Everything wasn't laid out for me, whether it's like people didn't teach me or I didn't allow myself to get all of it at the time. But being that when I got my education, it was like things were being laid out in front of me, like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I bit the fish hook. It's not gonna happen no more.
I believe a college education put me in a position where I wasn't so in need of resources that I had to start thinking criminally. Because when I tell you, during the recession, when the unemployment ran out and then my wife ran out and, I'm sitting at home, the only thing I'm thinking of is going back to what I know, sell some dope. And I just kind of sat on my hands. I didn't do anything. I didn't pay rent. I didn't pay bills. I didn't pay anything for the next couple months. And it was actually school that kind of saved me because, my dad happened to be going to school at the time. My Uncle Reno was going to school. My other Uncle James, these are my dad's homeboys. They were all taking substance abuse classes with Dr. Love at Merritt. So that's what landed me at Merritt. And they already had all the hookup as far as getting your financial aid and talk to this person and do that. And then my first day there, I meet a guy who become my mentor, Ronald Mouse. He's over at Coastal now. He took Dr. Love's place. He was also over the Street Scholars program at Merritt College for formerly incarcerated students, Street Scholars peer mentoring program. So just the right people were at the right place at the right time that kind of helped guide me. And it was school that saved my life. Because I don't know what I would have did had I not went back to school.
First, what they want to know, did you really write this book? How could an uneducated motherfucker dropping out the 6th grade, go to prison? We have set you up for failure, period. You do not breathe, period. You're gonna go to prison, juvenile hall, camp, youth authority, prison. You're gonna join a prison gang. You're gonna either get stabbed, or you're gonna stab people. You're gonna spend the rest of your fucking life in solitary confinement. You are finished, Cody Scott. And I said, no. Fuck no. Hell no. I ain't finished, yo. Got a spirit of a thug in me. And not just no regular, ordinary thug. I'm on like Senghor, motherfuckers rebelling against the system. And that's thug shit.
There are 1.7 million black men under some form of correctional control today, about twice the 870,000 black men who were enslaved in 1850. Slavery wasn't abolished, just redesigned.
You know that nigger? See one of yours? Never saw him before in my life. Trumbull, that's him.
He a runner, he a track star. He gon' run away when the cops come. He can go to jail, he got 12 warrants. And if they catch this man, he ain't going home. No time soon, soon.
In the United States, approximately over 1 million people are contained in either local, state, federal, juvenile, immigration, or some other form of incarceration or detention center. But when you assess and take a deeper look at the number of people who enter these facilities within a time span of a year, that number is exponentially larger than 1 million and closer to 10 million people, which is equivalent to about a quarter of the population of the state of California. 1 in 4 has had a sibling incarcerated, 1 in 5 has had a family member incarcerated, and 1 in 34 people has had an immediate family member spend 10 or more years in prison. The unasked question is, does locking up millions of people prevent crime and prevent people from reoffending?
Incarceration itself is something that increases recidivism. A lot of the work we do is try to get the system, all the decision makers that lead up to the point of incarceration, to do alternatives instead of locking people up. Because we know from the research, not just because we think this, but research has shown that if you take 2 people with similar criminal backgrounds and one you put in jail and one you leave in the community and supervise there, the one that stays in the community will have better outcomes on a number of factors. Education, job prospects, owning a home, family life, all of those things will tend to be better if you don't lock up somebody. And then on the other side of that, the one that gets locked up on average is more likely to go deeper into the system. Once they touch the system, the likelihood is they will go deeper into the system. And once they get out, they're more likely to commit more crimes.
In 1848, California claimed to be free, but by 1865, adopted language denying that reality. It made involuntary servitude legal for the punishment of a crime and replaced slave shacks with jail and prison time. Convict labor, the leasing of prisoners and chain gangs, it's not a mystery. Profiting off of Black and brown bodies is not ancient history.
My name is Michael Harris. I'm a lawyer. I work for the National Center for Youth Law. I've been working as a lawyer for 40 years. I've been working here at the National Center for Youth Law a little over 10 years. Absolutely, there's an infrastructure that's grown up around incarcerating, for the most part, people of color. I mean, so let's just take the big picture for a second. Starting around 1970 or so, there was a tremendous uptick in incarceration. And most of that increase was Black and brown people. And so who benefited from that? What's called the prison industrial complex. So let's look at California for a second. California built a number of new prisons, right? So the prison guard union was certainly pushing that because it built up their ranks and it built up their power. The politicians who can get elected saying they're tough on crime wanted to do that too because that's a tried and true method of getting voters to vote for people, at least in many political districts, is being tough on crime. The Democrats had been saying we need to defund the police or deploy police in a different way so that if somebody is having a mental health challenge, you don't send the police to deal with that, you send someone else who's trained with mental health techniques to address that. Now you're hearing, oh no, we need more police. The crime rate's going up, we need more police. It's a lot of political power is built around this approach to policing, and this is the piece that's really devastating. They put these prisons in mostly white communities. And so what that does is it puts political power in places where these men are living, but they have no say. So for purposes of political power, the bodies that are in a prison count for redistricting, but they don't vote. And so they put prisons in these mostly white areas. And so what that does is put enhanced power into the hands of white politicians who have no interest at all in representing the interests of the black and brown men who are in their district. And so in essence, they're representing just the white constituents, but they have their power as a result of the black and brown men who are locked up in their district. And that's happening nationwide. And so going back to the financial piece, that's a jobs program. All these places where there's not really much of an economy going, there's no jobs, there's no business going on, they put prisons there as a way for those men who are white men in those communities to get jobs. And those jobs pay well, and they have pensions, and they have benefits. And so that's how the economics of it reinforce this whole notion of we got to build more prisons, we got to lock up more people, and we got to be tough on crime. All of that is integrated together.
So when you need something, you're going to really go for it. You know what I'm saying? If you really need money, you're going to straight out there, you're going to rob somebody. Whether it could be 5 policemen on the corner of that block, but if you want that man, he just went in that store for that money, you're going to run up in that store. You know what I'm saying? Everybody got to go. I needed to get money because I was in the street by myself. Now my mom pushed me out. She said, you either leave my house, I'm going to call police on you. It's like, fuck it. I took all my things and I broke out. So my mom's kicked me out. Now I need to get money. I mean, now I need to get money because now I got all my clothes is in the motherfucking van, in my man's van. Now I don't got no place to stay. I mean, I'm sleeping in vans. I need to get this money.
So what has changed? Nothing has changed. The same hood is 1 block down the street. The same sacks is out there, the same weapons. So what's different? So I talk about the transforming of the mind. My mindset is different. All the same elements are there, but the things that used to attract me and bring me down are now things that I see as opportunities to model change to other people. But before, those were the necessities for me to survive, I thought. But the way that I looked at survival, I needed to change. So what was survival for me? Man, when I came on, I had to have my whip, gotta have some fresh jewelry. I can't be out there I'm RD, man. I gotta be right, you know? And so that would drive a lot of the decisions that I made.
Let's just be honest about it. There is this mythology about that's how you show you're hard, that's how you show you're a man. All of that is still, young men are struggling to try and understand, how can I be a man in this time and in this place, and what's the right way for me to behave?
So I'm out here trying to live a life that I just got home, and I'm trying to live a life that I really can't live to impress people that probably really don't like me, right? To do something that's gonna send me right back. But that was what I needed to challenge and needed to change. So I say that is key because sometimes my mentors weren't available when I needed them. And I needed to have that staying power. And that came from, reconditioning my mind to say, man, look, man, this is really what I need to survive. When I started to read about brothers like Malcolm and Martin, I said, man, look, I can go into an institution under the tutelage of white supremacist organization and I could change my life. I live on meager standards, man. I'm making 50 cents an hour, brother, and I'm living fine. Ain't got no worries, right? I can tone down, I ain't wearing no jewelry, I ain't tripping on nothing. I could tone down all of my necessities. But I come home and I can't do that for myself or my family. That is, to me, that was the epitome of institutionalization. So I challenged myself at that. I said, man, if I can live meager for them, I can live meager for me and my family. I could do without a car for a while until I earn it. I could get on the bus, man. I ain't too good to get on the bus, take public transportation, and key, I could ask for help. Cause that's something I was taught you don't do in the game. Because if you owe somebody, then you beholden to them. But I started to look at these programs. Get me a bus ticket to get around the city until I could do better. Go down there and apply for GA or food stamps. Get some help. Oh man, you taking handouts. No, I'm fulfilling my needs until I can do better. This ain't an all-time. I'm not finna stay at this level. It's a stepping stone, but it's a very essential stepping stone. So changing my mindset, and humbling myself and asking for help was key. And it's my staying power. It's what keeps me focused to this very day.
One of the terms that I've learned in my work, Rob, is trusted messenger. Somebody who's had the life experience of being incarcerated, being in the crime, being in the act, doing all the things you do to get incarcerated, serving time for it, and coming out and having a total different worldview now. That person, when he talks to young people, is a trusted messenger. That young man knows that what they hear from that trusted messenger is not no BS. They're going to get the real. And so that's why they call them trusted messengers.
Houdini used to say, friend is a word we use every day, but most of the time we use it in the wrong way, right? So, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's conditioning. I think it's by plan and design, but brothers will give you what I call a suicide kit as soon as you come home, because it's like, I like you, I care about you, but I'm really looking at my revenues. I know you, so you an investment. I know if I get you back in the game, you gonna hustle. I know that you ain't gonna tell, and I know that you gonna make money. So you my top candidate. So when you come home, it's like, man, you need a whip? I got you. I got you, right? Until you really need that stuff. And now you back doing things that you wouldn't normally do by going too fast. Brothers will hand us that suicide kit when we first get out if we open to it. So the transformation of the mind.
Friends, how many of us have them? Friends,
You got friends, huh?
ones we can depend on. Friends.
Sure about that?
Anything about Houdini now? I'm like mentors. How many of us have them?
Right,
The ones we can depend on.
That's right.
You looking for a brighter season? Need to lay your burden down.
Where are the mentors?
When I was coming up, my big homies didn't teach me nothing except for don't put your fingerprints on the shell casing. You gotta chop what the design. They didn't teach me in the financial literacy. They didn't teach me about my credit. They didn't teach me nothing that would. You have some that would teach you like good stuff like stay in trouble, but there wasn't no basics to it. So, with me, and even if I did, what I list, I asked myself this just the other day. I said, with the 15-year-old me listen to me right now, if I was sitting right in front of him right now, he was seeing it as me in the future, would I listen? And I came up with no. At that time, I couldn't even fathom having a conversation, let alone being cool with her, eating with her. Being a race rise and prilling with them. As I got older, I found out these dudes ain't that bad. Everybody needs a mentor. And when it comes back to me now, I know that I really want to prevent anybody from going through any situation that I was going through. As I said earlier, I was really dumb. And as this brother said earlier, would you listen to yourself? Right now, would the young you listen to you? No, probably not me neither. I know that for a fact. So I really feel like I got to be more patient, when I do say something and not just aggressively be like, you should do this, you should do that. You know what I'm saying? Really get to know them and, open up. For me, when I was going through the things that I was going through, we had different counselors that would come in and try to ask you all these questions, try to guide you up on what to do. But nobody ever opens up and, tells them about themselves and their flaws, So I always try to make it a point
to tell them my flaws, in the beginning and give them some background up on me before I start going into, well, what's going on with you? What's this and that? I really try to open up the door for them to understand I'm not here to, bash you or just tell you how to be. I'm here to really give you the game so you don't have to go through the same thing.
Actually seeing people who are driven to create a life for themselves and who use art. I study rap artists. When I was in prison, I was watching these artists like create their own content, these mixtapes. But watching people say, look, this is what I believe I was born to do, and to create the thing and then to hustle, that modeling of what's possible, like that worked for me. That reading magazines and I would read, Black Enterprise and Entrepreneur and Inc. But I was also reading The Source and Vibe magazines because those magazines were people that I can relate to. Just see people from that perspective who were doing the things that I imagined was possible for me. Like that was a game changer, being a writer and seeing, writers like Quan and Terry Woods and, these writers who came from the inner city, they weren't going through the traditional route of being published. They was just saying, look, our stories are worth telling. Like that inspired me. I had cutouts, of Chef Jeff Henderson, a brother who had served 10 years in prison, wrote the book Cooked, came out, went from being a busboy to being an executive chef at the Bellagio, like seeing him do that. And then years later, meeting him and being able to say, hey, you inspired me. But just seeing people who have been doing it, people who were committed to their dream and their vision, like that thing worked for me. I think for, other people, it's like, can you align yourself with somebody who's already done what you're trying to do?
I think the main reason why I haven't been rearrested is because, remember I talked to you about the values that mama installed? Well, I came home with different values. I had to simplify my life, clear the mind so that I could see things for what they are and then be able to work through them. I still struggle with that today, right? The temper, still there. Everything that I used to feel, still there. It's the emotional intelligence that I have today coupled with my values. So my value system, self-realization, family, education, community. If it don't have nothing to do with that, I do not engage, right? What's up, bro? What you looking at? I'm not engaged in this. This don't have nothing to do with my value system, right? Whereas before, it was all emotion. So now I know what I'm feeling, right? I know what I'm feeling. When I'm mad, I can tell you, oh man, I'm hot right now. I need to, right? I need to figure out where this is coming from. I'm getting frustrated right now, right? I'm sad now, right? You hurt my feelings, all this stuff. I didn't have this ability before, right? And this is why I'm not getting rearrested, because I would say back then, I needed somebody to control me, probably, right? Today, I'm in control.
Mentors for the contemporary man.
It's like really being intentional, like in any relationship, right? Giving it life. So what we would do is let's sit down and eat together. It's not just about the business, right? Let me get to know you as a person. Let me get a feel for you, because to be honest, everybody ain't for everybody. Or let me say it like this, everybody ain't for me. So I need to get a sense and a vibe. So I would take opportunities to go out with folks from my cohort I would normally spend time with to see what their interests are. And that's really where the convergence came in, where the connection and the bond was. We have similar interests. So I started meeting brothers like yourself that really love the community and have a passion for change. And it's not just about getting out, staying out, but it's like, man, we got a huge problem in our community and we got to do something about it. The more we know, the more we owe. So how do we get back to our folks? And how do we make it beneficial to ourselves while we're doing it? So I started meeting more people like that. And it wasn't fast. It was a slow process, but I had the mentality where I was ready for that. And I knew what I was looking for. And I started asking the right questions.
If I'm mentoring you, I'm not trying to pull you in a direction that you don't want to go in. I want to meet you where you're at. Somebody tell me they're thirsty, I don't try to give them housing. Making myself available. When I say making myself available, if I'm at home or in the community or something, one of my sons, my wife, my grandson, if they say, hey, I need to talk to you, I'm not staying on the computer while you're talking to me. I'm going to shut down the computer, turn off the phone, put the phone away. I'm fully engaged. And that's my whole model. Not about me putting together people's life plans, not about me offering up a whole bunch of, what I think you should do. I got to first actively listen. You let me know what you want to do, where you're trying to go, and then I could coach you within that process to help you get there. If I can't help you, normally I can connect you to someone else who can.
Can you build that relationship without a sense of entitlement? Because that's the thing too. Like if you see somebody who's really successful, that means that they have major demands on their time. Oftentimes they have families, they have all these other obligations outside of what we see. And so it's really building a relationship and not looking at it as transactional. And then it allows people to, just proximity can be a game changer, right? So I say the mentoring piece is really important. Therapy, I can't express that enough. It's like if you have not done the work prior to being released, like getting a therapist is really important. It's a very unique experience to walk out into a world that you haven't been in for 20 years, 15 years, 5 years, and to try to navigate that world. And you need somebody to help you, one, give yourself grace, give yourself permission to say it's not okay in times when you don't feel okay, but also somebody who can just understand that your experience is unique, despite what we may think, because now people are talking about, mass incarceration. They're talking about reentry. They're talking about cutting the prisons down, abolishing prisons. Like those conversations weren't common 10 years ago. And they're coming out due to the work of, many of us on the ground and, many of these organizations. But what I would say is like, therapy is invaluable for somebody coming out of prison. So just understand that the world that you're coming into is vastly different. The way that people interact socially is vastly different. I remember coming home and seeing family members get into arguments, and say the wildest, craziest things. And then 2 hours later, they're, eating food and drinking and laughing and joking. And like, I couldn't initially relate to that because that didn't happen in prison. You get into an argument, that argument escalates to somebody has to leave the yard. And so for me, just recognizing the humanity, the complexities of being human, where you can have a disagreement and it doesn't mean that you no longer love the person or care about them or that you feel like you have to, get into a confrontation with them, and you can only get through that, with having a therapeutic outlet. And that may look like a formal therapist, or it may just look like somebody who's been through what you've gone through and that understands the anxiety, understands the paranoia, the insecurities, all those things.
Mentors have impacted my likelihood of staying out of jail more so than any other factor. And I say that because, for example, I'm taking my son to go to the Yale football camp. They want to see him. He's being recruited by them. When we go out there, we're going to Yale, Harvard, Columbia, UPenn to work out for those colleges. But I'm going to also hang with my boy who was a lifer in the pen. And I forgot to mention that. When you say mentors, I mentioned everybody who was outside. They served life sentences, they outside. And I still hang with these guys and talk to them weekly, right? From a mentor standpoint, and people say, why? These guys were available, man, when many other people weren't. And the biggest misconception I think about incarcerated folks like myself and the guys that I just mentioned, many of them, remember, you get life sentence. DC was a Marine. He made one mistake and got a life sentence. He's not a horrible person, not somebody that was, caught up in a lot of BS and all that. To get a life sentence, all you take, you just need to make one mistake. These guys had true skills. They could connect with people. They could change lives and all that stuff. These guys are so misrepresented in our society. These guys have done more in the short time that they've been home than a lot of my homeboys that never went to jail have done in the last 40, 50 years out here, right? This is not, you're not talking about ordinary people. You're talking about extraordinary people.
If somebody asks me, well, how do I get into school? How do I get out of this? And my intention is that I'm doing this for the sake of God. I'm doing this to keep you out of, a situation that might be harmful, that becomes sacred knowledge. Not just, it's not just how do I pray or how do I read the Quran or something like that. So, mentorship we use that word loosely. It can also be teaching. It can also be, passing on sacred knowledge. That's an obligation. So, I feel it's incumbent on me. I'm not going out of my way to find people that don't want to learn. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to learn, just like, me, people in the pen, if you want to know, you're going to knock on that person's cell. Hey, man, how do I write this 602? How do I, right? I'm not chasing you. But if you ask me, I have to give it to you.
Sometimes people say, you served your time. You don't owe them nothing. You did your time. You can move on. For me, I have a different kind of lens at everything. I feel like I don't beat myself up. I don't hide under a rock. Like, I'm living a really good life, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I still honor the life that I took. You know what I'm saying? I'm still knowledgeable of the harm that I've done in my community to a point to where doing what I'm doing today is a part of my healing process. So mentoring, that's a part of my healing process too. So whoever I'm mentoring is also mentoring me. And they probably don't even know it because I'm learning a lot from that experience and that conversation, and it's healing for me. What I will say is I believe that everybody want to be a part of something. And I'm not going to say especially men, but because I'm a male, I guess I got to think from that lens. Everybody want to be a part of something, whether it's a sports team, whether it's a debate team, whatever it is, to be a part of a community, a tribe, or something. There's a desire and a need for that. And people are going to seek that no matter what, whether it's healthy or unhealthy. What was easy for me was outside of the house, immediately outside of the house. It was accessible right there in my face. And so I ended up eventually seeking that. And so my thing for young black men is it's okay to desire that. Everybody in this world, we were born in family structures and community for a reason because we need each other. So it's okay to want to be a part of something. That is perfectly fine. It's about finding that which is healthy for you, where you ain't got to look over your shoulders. You don't have to worry about incarceration or dying early. You don't have to worry about that. Obviously, it's complex in this era where anything can happen, and because of these systems that people want to experience things anyway. But for the most part, you want to set yourself up in a position to be around a healthy social group.
But I think giving people agency to figure out what they want to do with their own lives and how to capitalize on their own gifts and talents or whatever that they already have, instead of being so rigid in the past where there was just like one size fits all, like one size doesn't fit all. I mean, not everybody is gonna be okay with just going to work a warehouse job. That was when I came out, that was the re-entry plan. Go get you a job, and here are the jobs. They gave us a list of jobs that were like warehouse, all of them warehouse. I'm like, is that all I'm here for, to work in a warehouse? And they weren't paying enough. So, like, what am I supposed to do for the rest of this? How am I supposed to survive out here? So I think people are smart enough to know what they want to do. Also, that if they're going down a road that maybe they don't want to do that, they can pull back and redirect themselves. And we just need to be there to help them do that and figure all that out, using their talents and also present all the information. You could do more than be a rapper. I was a rapper. Everybody's a rapper. But everybody can't be a rapper, man. Or a basketball player or whatever else we think we got to do to be successful. There's other opportunities for that as well. So just changing the mindset of what success looks like. It's not, you don't have to be a millionaire either. I mean, it's cool if that happens, but it's cool if it doesn't happen. If you just live and survive without hurting anybody else, taking from anybody else, that's cool too. That's a good life too. And to raise your children and take care of your family, I mean, that's good.
The book or the resource that really gave me hope. The one that sticks out is that makes me want to holler. That's the one that just had an impact that I remember that helped me to not leave prison with the victim mentality that, oh, I'm just screwed. I got a felony. The world is against me. And I'm not saying that there aren't challenges. I'm just saying that it gave me hope, I guess. Like, hey, here's a person who's a professional who went, and I think his crime may have been violent, but basically went from one side to the other side and who's well respected in his field. And being in my position, a lot of the African-American males that get a job at BART, they start on the cleaning crew. And I think they start there because pretty much it's the job that they're qualified for, right? I'm not saying that only only job black people are qualified for is that, but I've noticed that a lot of people start on the cleaning crew. So one of the things that happens is a lot of times, a lot of guys, they come up to me and they say, hey, I heard you were, they're 23, 24 years old. I heard you were once doing my job, and they ask me for advice. And those are people I do take under my wing. So going back to mentorship, I think that's an unofficial mentorship that I do. And it's not only black, it's anybody who starting at the bottom of this organization. I think I'm proud of being a symbol of what you can do if you work hard. So, and they come in, I tell them, hey, here's the ground rules, work hard. There's plenty of opportunity here. I tell them, things about their retirement. Hey, you're young. Some guys, they may have a kid. And these are all things that you can do to, invest for the future, how to grow within the company. And I give them my card and I say, you can call me anytime. I am proud of that. And I look forward to seeing some of those guys in my positions or positions above me in the future.
That success is really just a series of smart decisions. And I was like, damn, that's so simple, but it's really genius. And when I started thinking about my own success, it was just like one smart decision after the next. And being able to evaluate whether a decision is smart or not came from me just having good mentors and reading books and, seeing other people who were doing similar things. And so if I would say anything, it's like that mentorship, therapy, and then, really having a sense of like, this is a process. This takes time, removing any sense of entitlement to other people's time or resources, and realizing that step by step, you can build anything that you imagine, but you got to make a commitment to taking the steps.
In every moment and in every situation, I always have a choice. I am not a product of my mistakes or my environment. I only focus on the things I can control. I prioritize my long-term happiness over instant gratification. It is my duty to become all that I can become. It is my duty to give all that I can give. I choose positive actions because it results in positive outcomes. I look forward to my future because I know amazing things are in store for me. I am proud of the man I am. Happiness is a choice, and I always choose to be happy.
Ice cream, floating water, cherries on the top. Do you like me? Yes or no? Just check a box. Do you want it?